My name is Malia Bouatia and I'm a journalist and activist. I feel that mental health is incredibly important, and it's something that we have only very recently given attention to and focused on a lot more in order to explain why it is that people feel the way that they do, why they suffer the way that they do, why things happen across society that are at times inexplicable. And I don't just mean that exclusively to the Muslim community. I think mental health globally has become something that we're paying a lot more attention to. I have suffered from depression for many years, which was in some ways set off by the suicide of a friend on my university campus, and then just generally my experiences of political activism, just dealing with the daily onslaught of attacks and hate towards racialized communities, Muslims, seeing what working class communities are being put through, and just the violence of the state and how it can just rip entire lives apart. It took a friend taking his own life because of his mental health problems for me to finally go to the doctor and speak to a counsellor and so on. But it could have gone on for a lot longer because, I experienced a civil war. I fled my country overnight, not knowing that I was going to start a new life somewhere where I didn't even speak the language. I knew no one. I absolutely didn't want to be in this country. I wanted to be back home with my family, with my neighbours, with my friends and so on. So I don't actually know at what point it started, but I do know the times where it really escalated. And that led to just me having breakdowns every so often, crying inexplicably, being unable to express things or even tolerate those closest to me, in the sense that because it would mean opening up and it would mean talking about feelings, and then that would lead me to an explosion of tears and breakdowns and so on. So it was just walking around like a ticking time bomb, emotionally speaking. I think doctors are expected to fix the problem very instantly or to be accused of all sorts of things, and that's an issue. And I think that whilst there is more collaboration between counsellors, therapists, psychiatrists and so on, and other sides of medicine, it's still in its early days. That's just a personal feeling. And I got a lot more from going to my university counsellor and having sessions with her every single week. And that helped me considerably, and it felt like I was taking back somewhat control of my life. And she would then speak to me about medication, the possibility of that, but also help me understand my mental state, the whether it was temporary, and what the medication would do, so that I have all the information I needed, but that ultimately the decision would lie with me. But obviously this isn't the case for everybody. Some absolutely do need that medication, and doctors and pharmacists will explain that. But I think it's important to try and collect all the information that is out there. So whilst on the one hand, we know we're more familiar with mental health and there are less burdens and taboos with identifying it, that on the other hand, the access to help is closing. And is becoming smaller and smaller. And I think that that's really, really, really worrying. Well-being today, that to a certain extent, it's become a luxury. It's, can I afford to take time out to focus on myself and to deal with the problems that I'm having, psychologically, physically, and so on. It's really, really important that we invest in services, charities, groups, collectives that are working in this area. And I think, like Inspirited Minds, it's important that we show up, if not, through donations, then by supporting and championing the work and by making sure that people hear about the efforts that exist. and the services that are available, especially if they can't afford the other avenues that are out there. And I think that it's about, again, if we have the expertise to create the alternative spaces in which people can seek support and seek counselling, or even be diagnosed in the first place. I know many, particularly young Muslim men, who absolutely refuse to be diagnosed, and I have a lot of family in healthcare, and they, on the spot will say, this person is suffering, is bipolar, this person is dealing with, a severe case of depression and so on, but they absolutely won't seek help because they feel that if it's on the records, that it will be used against them, whether it's employment, education, or because of their political dissent. And I think that's a huge problem. And so our efforts have to be about lobbying for policy that ensures services exist and that anybody can access them, irregardless of their, financial backgrounds, race, ethnicity, even migration status. I remember particularly during my presidency within the National Union of Students, people witnessed very publicly my experiences of institutional racism, like everyone, from the government to the media to foreign embassies would come after me. It was a very, really, really exceptional time, to the point where I'd have Tory ministers feeling sorry for me. I mean, that's how bad things get. It's got to be bad. And with that came, those around me, with all the good intentions that they had, saying, you need to take some time off. You need to ensure that you preserve yourself and your well-being and your mental state and so on. But they would not offer any concrete solution for it, and I'd explain my mental state deteriorates at every attack and every turn and every political fiasco and every racist campaign and policy that comes out. And the only way to ease my mental state is by taking on some of that load. There's no other way for it. A spa is not going to solve it. A holiday for a week is absolutely not going to solve it, because all I'm going to be doing is thinking about all those things, and I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to have panic attacks. And throughout my presidency, I had what some deemed slightly abnormal health problems that developed to the point where I had to go and receive treatment in Belgium. Because they couldn't explain what was happening. I was having these attacks, physical ones that felt like I was just having a heart attack, but more than just my heart, it was all over my body. I couldn't breathe, I would vomit, all those things. It was a physical manifestation of my mental state. And so in reality, whilst medication can help ease it temporarily, the solution was obviously going to be long-term. It was going to be based on me seeking counselling and therapy and so on. Living in a capitalist society, you're constantly presented with spa days and manicures and facials and I don't know what else as the answer. And again, not everybody can afford that, but also that's not necessarily going to solve the problems that you may have. Each person's mental health issues are different. But that doesn't mean that it necessarily will be solved in one day, 1 week, even 1 year, or 10. It may sit with you forever, but you have to understand that you're not a problem for having those issues. And we have to steer away from problematizing those that do have mental health issues. Malia's been through this attack and that attack, she'll get through anything. And it's well, I shouldn't have to, and I really don't want to. Things are really bad. You want me to keep going more, and how much more do I have to endure? Unwillingly. I didn't ask for this, but I'll keep fighting because that's what I do, and that's, that is what I'm driven to do. But there has to be a recognition that interventions need to be made and the load needs to be shared. Our faith gives me considerable strength. the main motivation. It's the main thing that keeps me going, because, yeah, often people say, like, with every blow, with every attack, how do you keep going? And I'm like, well, dunya, that I'm going to do what I can. It doesn't mean that I'm going to completely neglect my body and mind and not try to live a happy and full life. But I recognise that this is all a test, and, you know, and that we do what we can. And I think that, but obviously, you know, many in the community will come to me and say that, Salat is the answer. It's all this mental health stuff is just, it's just the West, it's the non-Muslims, and, you know, it's, you know, as long as you pray, as you seek guidance, and it's like, that really isn't going to clear everything. Of course that we put all our faith in God, but, you know, you still have to tie your camel, right? You have to put in assurances. You can't just be like, you know, I'll just wake up and I'll see where God takes me and what happens, and if I live tomorrow, then alhamdulillah. It doesn't work like that. And I don't personally feel that our faith dictates living life in that way. I'm Malia Bouattia, and my resistance includes my ability to carry on and self-preserve.